Okay, back to going live. Let's grab the stream again. Okay, grab that. Close that so I don't hear myself being insane. Fix that. Okay. Alright, let's see if I need to jump into a different chat channel. Sign into the chat in a browser. Cool. Okay, a less embarrassing start, hopefully. I did not have my headphones in, and my microphone was on mute. So that sucked. Let's see where I started at. Okay. So I've got a Discord notification. Let's see if that's someone yelling at me that I'm stupid. No, it's just one of my players complaining about being tired. Very understandable. Okay. And then don't bring up the calculator. What the hell is that? Chat. Okay. Alright, so I'm Llama Man from the Mystic Arts Discord. I wanted to do an initial thoughts on the Crown of the Fungal Queen adventure released by the Mystic Arts team recently. It is a starter adventure for levels 1 through 5 through 5th edition, 2nd edition, as Dottie likes to call it, or 5.5 as it's now officially called on D&D Beyond. And it's designed around concepts that the Mystic Arts team has put forth on their Patreon and through their Adept tiers of PDFs. It is a hexploration adventure featuring 5-room dungeons and keystone leveling and random encounters and things like that. It's a really fun kind of like OSR take on modern 5th edition. And it's set in Dottie's Atroxia setting in his world, which he describes as a flintlock fantasy by gaslight setting. It's got your muskets and trains and kind of modern politics set to the backdrop of the usual owlbears and orcs and goblins and wizards and skeletons and zombies and things like that. It's a really fun setting. I've run several adventures and campaigns in it so far, based on how it was sent to us in the broadsheets on his Patreon. I'd also like to point out that I am a biased opinion here. I am an expert tier subscriber on his Patreon. I'm very active in the Discord. I participated in all the live streams that became this product. And there are certain things throughout the adventure itself that Dottie was like, hey, because you talked about this, this was added. And so I love the team. I love what they do. I am particularly biased in this case, and I want to just put that forth from the beginning. Let me get into... So with that out of the way, I'd like to kind of get into some of the feedback. The lead designer, Magnus, of the team had sent me some actionable topics that I could provide feedback from, as we'll see here. He mentions reading the adventure, what makes you want to run it, what makes you hesitant, do you feel any parts are lacking clarity in terms of design, making it difficult for you to visualize running it, or alternatively, are there things that you feel are too rigid in design, making it difficult for you to run your own way with it. And so he gave me that little bit of actionable advice, and after my first initial reading, I felt like I could give some of that advice. I hope to, when I do actually get myself to the table running the adventure, have more useful, practical advice for him. But I think out of the gate, I could answer several of those questions. And also I wanted to share this fantastic project that the team put together for us, because I think it's one of the best things going on in third-party content right now. Yeah. Oops, wrong button. This button. So the adventure is broken up into different chapters. There's the introduction chapter, the chapter on Dillhorn itself, the starting town, the Eastern Ashwood, and the Western Ashwood. I think I can show off some of what's going on here. Yeah. So the adventure starts off in this little town Dillhorn here, and there's the Eastern Ashwood, the Western Ashwood, and then the swamp in the center. Don't want to show you too much of the adventure, but and I think that's a really, really good way to break the chapters down by themselves. I think the team knows what they're doing with that. There's also an appendix at the end that has the magic items, the monsters, and there's a separate PDF that has a number of the alternative rules that you can use. There's firearm rules, hexploration rules, crafting rules, and dungeon turn rules, which you can, if you choose, ignore. There's a little sidebar on how to ignore those rules if you want to play a more standard 5e adventure, but I personally recommend you use those tools. Kind of one of the big things about the Mystic Arts channel is that they kind of provide like procedural structural tools that were used in older editions of the game and are used in the OSR to fill in some of the weaknesses people commonly find with 5th edition, like the fact that exploration doesn't have a lot of mechanics, and that there's not a lot of procedure for the players to have choice as they explore. And I think that the team tackles that in an interesting and easy way, and that's one of the biggest draws to me to the Mystic Arts. Shit, what's happening? People are talking to me. Okay, sorry. Wrong button again. I'm gonna hit that a lot of times. I so apologize. I am not a streamer. I am just a nerd who's really passionate about Mystic Arts content. So, the introduction. Oh, no, that's not where I want to start. With that out of the way, I kind of wanted to give some feedback that would be helpful to Magnus on his actionable topics. One of the other things that I want you to know is that the team's design goals, they've stated to me through various conversations and their other projects, like the Mystic Monsters and the broadsheets, which are fantastic. If you're on their Patreon, please go read the broadsheets. They're fantastic. But they want to fit as much table-ready advice on a 2-page spread as they can. They want to keep their adventures to as few pages as possible. They want to keep it as table-ready as possible for DMs, and I find that to be a great design goal, and something that they strive to do. But I do also find that at the table sometimes you lack some specific clarity, some specific lore, some specifics that other longer-winded campaign adventures would have. You know, longer bits of lore. Like, I don't want to like constantly repeat myself saying that like, oh, it would be really nice to have more information about this boss character or more information about the design of this room, right? Because a lot of the time throughout their adventures, they sacrifice a little bit of that stuff to fit useful to you running at the table information in easy to parse out pages. And so I think that design goal is inherent, is like core to their philosophy. And so I don't like, sometimes I don't agree with it and sometimes I really do. And so I don't want to keep bringing that criticism to the foreground. So I just want to get that out of the way up front. They have their own philosophy, and some people may like it, some people may not. I think it's really table usable. The adventures I've run of theirs at the table, almost always, it's better to have the actionable information that they give you up front than it is to have the extra lore that I would love, right? And the extra like frivolous details and descriptions of the rooms. So I don't want to harp on that throughout throughout my review and any future reviews that I do. That is their design philosophy, and so that's going to be something some DMs won't like and others will. The adventure itself, though, is broken into several chapters. There's an introduction. I think I have a scroll up here. There's there's the introduction, the Dillhorn chapter, the East Ashwood, the West Ashwood, and the Swamp, as well as a appendix. The introduction has your typical, here's what we are, here's the background of the adventure, here's a map. Let's see if I can get that on the screen right. Here's a little map, a little hex map for you to follow. Don't want to spoil too much. Right away, it's laid out just beautifully. There's just information on Atroxia, information on the background, how to keystone level, and then it jumps right into their introductory adventure, All Hell Gek, which I've run previously. It's a fantastic adventure. It's a very replayable adventure because different parties are going to handle it different ways. And this new update has this cute little art of Davi being adorable and giving you DM advice, which, what's not to love about that? The adventure follows a lot of the stuff that Davi talks about in his videos, situations, not scenes. There's a really cool scene where like you can stumble into this baby dragon and maybe you attack it. Maybe you find out that there's a prisoner over here who's the dragon's handler, and you can team up with them, and you can go to this lab over here and meet an alchemist who wants you to kill Gek, the boss. And there's all this stuff, but you could also just murder Hobo all of these things and get a bunch of loot, and you know, different parties are going to play it different ways, and I find that really exciting. It's a 5-room dungeon, which the team, which are very gung-ho about. They really love 5-room dungeons. They've been, I think that's one of their most popular things that they do, is talk about 5-room dungeons and their dungeon jam. There's several 5-room dungeons free on their Patreon, and honestly, I've been practicing 5-room dungeons ever since they really turned me on to them, and I find them to be fantastic, like a fantastic structure of how can I have a good session today in 5 simple steps. How can I present my players a problem, a solution, a setback, and some reward in a boss fight, right? It's structured in a way that really sets up your sessions to be fun. And you can do them on the fly. They're very simple once you get a hang of them, which I'm starting to really get. And All Hell Gek is a really great example. See, I mean, there's more than 5 rooms in this dungeon, and it's, you know, there's videos on the channel talking about how to make it more than just like 5 rooms in a row, how you can use it as a formula, how you can use it as like a 3-act structure in a play, things like that. So All Hell Gek is really fantastic, and my only real criticism of this particular introduction part of the adventure is that I think there needs to be some advice in here, because it's aimed at new DMs. I would like to see a little bit of advice saying, hey, if this is your first time running, like we're assuming here, please stop the adventure here, help your player characters level up to 2nd level, talk about what they liked, what they didn't like, but don't continue the adventure until you have had a chance to read the Dillhorn section, which is the following chapter. Because I think that if you jump in and you know, you finish this adventure in 2 or 3 hours, and you still have 2 hours left of your 5-hour game session, and you jump into it, the DM's gonna get lost. He's gonna get overwhelmed. He's gonna feel like he doesn't know what he's doing. He, she, they. Sorry to not use inclusive terms there. So that's like one tiny bit of criticism that I would have liked to have seen is, hey, stop the adventure from here, send all your friends home, go read the Dillhorn chapter, because I think that it sets you up strong. If you've read this, I think reading the Dillhorn chapter, personally to me, is going to be one of the most important aspects to get right in this adventure. Is this little starting town of Dillhorn, this little Flintlock by fantasy town here with the train and the logging and the it's a wonderful town. I want to liken this adventure, and it's easy to liken it to the Lost Mines of Phandelver, the official 5e starter set that many of us have played and loved. One of the strengths of that adventure, and you see it here in the Fungal Queen, is the starting town. There are lovable NPCs. The town is in turmoil. It needs the heroes, and the town sends you off on quests. And I think That's something the team has captured from starter set adventures that they like. And I know that Dottie personally has run Lost Mines once or twice, and I know that he likes other starter towns like Sandpoint from Cobalt Press and stuff like that. And I think that obviously they must have been very inspired by the good starter towns in those adventures, because this is, to me, a top tier starter town. As I flip through this gazetteer, we've got a little map of the town, we've got how to use the quests, we've got these lovely NPCs. I especially like Sister Francesca here, and Kook and Meat. I think those are some of the... can I see Meat? Meat. Let me scroll over here to him. I'm showing too much of this adventure, I apologize. Anyway, there's a number of really, really interesting NPCs, and then once you get through the gazetteer of the town, there are a number of encounters that take place in Dilhorn. The first and foremost and most important is this night at the tavern, which kind of breaks the comparison, in my eyes, to Dilhorn, in that one of the biggest, or not Dilhorn, Lost Mines, one of the biggest criticisms of Lost Mines is that you don't meet the Black Spider until the very end of the dungeon. And while this isn't the Fungal Queen herself, this knight shows up multiple times throughout the campaign. It mentions the knight, it mentions the backstory. It's a very strong, good opening scene, and I think it needs to be emphasized that this is an important scene in the adventure. And that's kind of where I return back to that earlier criticism about you need to stop at all hell Gek if you are a new DM. If you don't have Dilhorn and these couple of scenes here clear in your head, you shouldn't keep running the adventure until next week. Spend the week reading up on this, reading the first couple of adventures that your party might pick up, and reading the Night at the Tavern adventure or encounter, because I think that's a very pivotal part of getting this adventure done well and right. And it's such a strong hook and such a strong, obviously, Dottie and Magnus and the team are plugged into the D&D sphere, and they know one of the weakest parts of Lost Mines is that the villain doesn't show up early, and they fix that with their adventure. The villain is right here, front and center, as soon as they go to the town, and the town has hooks on, hey, maybe you should go to this crypt. Hey, maybe, you should go over here to the rat home. Maybe this town is so well designed. Each of the NPCs has a little hook, like here's some quests, and they send you to other NPCs, they send you to other quests. And I think there's a lot of redundancy where, if they meet this end, if they decide they want to go to the inn's going to send them over here and over there. If they want to go to the blacksmith, he's going to send them to the Hunter's Lodge, and the Hunter's Lodge is going to send them to the mayor. And I may have some of these wrong. It's been a couple of days since I read the adventure, but there's all these redundancies to send people back and forth to different parts of the town and to pick up the different quests that send them out into the woods. And I think that's beautiful design. It's inspired design, and it really just shows how well thought out the adventure is by the team, and how practiced they are at running modules to know that these are the sorts of things a DM wants and needs in order to run this kind of adventure. Because of course they picked a hex crawl, procedurally generated random encounter adventure as their first real foray into making a big adventure. Absolute insanity. But I think they nailed it. I think they did a really, really good job in nailing this. And I think Dilhorn is a really big key to how they did that and how they've achieved that. From here, the remaining chapters are the Eastern Ashwood breakdown. Beaver, amazing. The people demanded a beaver. Dottie gave them a beaver. I was a champion of the beaver, and here he is in all his majesty. The Western Ashwood and the swamp here. So different breakdowns. Each breakdown has a section. I don't know if you can see it on my screen. Each breakdown has a section on the random encounters you can do there, the points of interest you can do there, and then the specific 5-room dungeons in each area. And it follows the advice that you find on the channel to a T. It has, let me see if I can find an example. So here's some of the random encounters, and they have the multiple scaling uses. The swamp's actually a little bit of less of a good example of that than I think the Eastern Ash would. So let's go to that. Yeah, here we go. The Goblin Nomads here, right? There's an easy difficulty, there's a moderate difficulty, a hard difficulty, and guidance on if they beat all of these, what happens, right? Like, so each time you roll this, it can be harder, or if you're the DM, you can just choose. Do you want this to be a hard encounter because they've had an easy time in the woods so far? Do you want this to be an easy encounter? Is it I think this one has the wolf pups too. There's actually a video on the wolf pups, the werewolves and wolf pups, on the Mystic Arts channel when they talk about how they theorize random encounters. And I think this is, again, just really good practical applications of the advice that their channel gives you. And it's also just really good practical advice for making and running these kinds of adventures. And so I really want to applaud the team there on how they've put these together. And then the points of interest, they all have wonderful tie-ins to the various dungeons and plot threads that go in and out. The points of interest inform the dungeons inform the points of interest, and they lead back and loop to and from the town in a way that, honestly, I don't know how the team juggled that. Like, if you look at the time window that they had writing this adventure, how well they knocked it out of the park is just so impressive. Like, you know, I watched this adventure take shape over, you know, I think it's like a dozen live streams, and the nonsense that we came up with in that stream versus the finished product we have here, night and day, in the way that the team organized this and put it together. Nope, damn it, I keep bringing up Magnus's advice. I think I'm getting to Magnus's advice. I think that's the next part I wanted to talk about. Yeah, I wanted to say that it weaves the narrative and the story in without being too overbearing. And so with the random encounters, with the different order in which you can do the dungeons, the different ways you can find information, the different allies you can make throughout the forest, no playthrough is ever going to be the same as another, which makes this a really replayable introduction to 5th edition, to Atroxia, to this style of play. And I think that is a fantastic thing to have. Like, this is an evergreen product, right? Even if you have to adjust the rules to 6th edition or Shadow Dark or Draw Steel, the way this adventure is designed, even without the mechanics, makes it an evergreen product in that they loop back, they lead back, they send you forth, they give you hints and clues to other locations. This is the kind of design that you need when you're running a hex crawl adventure, and it shows the team's thoughtfulness and their experience in playing this kind of adventure in a way that I just think is so hard for even WotC, like professional designers who get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, this is five people that are just passionate about D&D. This is not, you know, WotC designers being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for their positions, right? These are just some people who I buy 7 jars of mustard a month for. I can't explain to you. Even MCDM, who are a small team, had to have freelancers to put this kind of work out as quickly as they did, and Dali's team is doing it in half the time. It's insane. It's special. I love that I'm a part of this. It's great. But as to some of the advice Magnus specifically asked for, the lead designer of the team here, he said, what makes you want to run this adventure? And first and foremost for me, it's that the channel's advice is in practice here. That is a huge factor. I come to the Mystic Arts for Dali's specific philosophy in bringing in old school Renaissance ideas into modern D&D, and how we can use those older tools and those ideas to cover in the gaps, to create procedures that cover in the gaps in the 5th edition core chassis, in dungeon turns, in hexploration rules, in crafting rules, etc. Right? They bring it in 5-room dungeon design. You know, not all of these ideas are unique to Dadi, but he brings them all together in a way that is front and center to this adventure, and I personally very much love it. Look at this art too. Look at this art is just evocative. A lot of this is done by their friend Brimram, and I know that they did bring in a couple of other artists here. Look at this adorable rat guy. Fantastic, fantastic stuff. So for me, that's a huge factor, as well as also, I've always really wanted to run a hex crawl really well. I've struggled. I did run a hex crawl. My map did not lend itself to hex crawl structure and the kind of excursion resting rules that I had found. Again, Dadi's excursion resting rules are his own, but they're not. The idea of a sanctuary resting place and only being able to take rests in such a place is not unique to Dadi. I've tried this before, and my map didn't lend itself to the procedure of going into a hex, seeing what's there, making conscious decisions as a party on what to explore next. Shock! Baby! Sorry, my dog's barking.